Well, good morning, all. We're fit and ready to hot to trot. Is that the expression, Pat? We're hot to trot.
That's hot tree trot, whatever the hell that came out of, I don't know. It
It's
sounds like an
good. I like
Americanism,
the
doesn't it?
sound of it. It's lively. You can almost
Yeah,
hear the horse's
hot
hooves.
to
Or
trot.
is it the
Yeah.
reindeers? Is it the reindeers
Yeah,
you hear?
I haven't a clue. But it sounds like someone came out of Hollywood.
Would you be playing the part for Christmas this year, Pat? Or
You know, someone should this an unbelievable thought occurred to me. I was 18, and I was at the ATU in Letterkenny, and they were doing something, and they're bringing in these kids, and I was asked to play Santa Claus, and I was young and had dark hair, and I was about 7 stone lighter than I am now. And back then, I thought it was a joke. Now I could play it no bother. Nobody asked me to do Santa, and I don't even need the padding anymore. That's the full circle of life, Doctor Collins.
you feel frustrated you can't. You're not getting your hour of glory on the stage.
God and glory, I. Jesus, Jude, what are you on about? Somebody was telling me there was a guy who was doing Santa Claus. He was getting something like 300 quid a day.
Oh, Jesus!
Jesus.
I never go at it
I,
myself then.
I'd have a go at myself. If they, 5 or 6 days, like, have you got a week of that? You'd be all right.
All right. Well, is this in stores and things, Pat?
I haven't a clue. Somebody just told me there was a guy getting paid. Yeah, maybe he was going around various places for some sort of store or
Mm.
something. But I was thinking,
Now,
if I was getting 300 quid a day, I'm your man.
the interesting thing is, I'll bet they have all sorts of different etiquette nowadays for
Mm.
children going up to Santa. For a
Oh,
start, there was no
absolutely.
way they'll have the child on their knee. The child
No.
will be standing, they might put their arm around the shoulders by the size of it. Or how corrupt our world has become. It is Stephen
Ah,
Ting.
it's ridiculous. Jude,
That,
I know someone. There's that sort of old implication that everything now is dirty and
yeah,
stained and whatever.
yeah,
It's horrible. Jesus, Jude. There was for years for sort of maybe because one pervert,
yeah.
99 are and getting it's a
Uh,
ridiculous way to work.
it must be hard for people in groups like. Well, you see, the Church of England's having a terrible time at the moment. I mean, they're
Yeah,
knocking off their Archbishop of Canterbury's like their skittles, and all because they're saying not that they were engaged in sexual misconduct, but that they didn't act in the way that they should have acted. Um,
yeah.
I just think it's too hard. It's really in a way it's people trying to run the Church of England or whatever church, uh, who aren't really interested in those churches, but they're just high on the idea of getting people for some public mistake or public error. And anyway, don't start me. You see, our first topic here, Pat, sad to say, is to do with sexual matters, and it's that
Yeah,
rape trial in France. I didn't. You probably got the woman's name, but I didn't get it.
yeah. Her name was Giselle Pellico.
And
Yeah,
well, the ghastly story of it is that over a period of 10 years, her husband drugged her and then raped her and then invited in friends and neighbors essentially to rape her as well. Up to 50 people. I mean, just, and it only came to light. And the big thing they're making of it now is that she rejected anonymity and appeared in court, and people are clapping their hands. What's your thoughts on it, Pat, and the reporting of it?
Jude, someone I was listening to it yesterday, and Jude, you sort of go, "Good God Almighty, what sort of man was our husband, Dominic Jellicoe, uh, Pellico? Like he went online. He seems to have been some sort of absolutely massive, perversion of some kind, and he drugged his wife, and then invited. They weren't friends and neighbors, dude. The vast majority of them were absolute strangers, and then he filmed them
These people
having
they
sex with
contacted
his wife
online, Pat.
online. Yeah, I think it was 46. Every one of them was found guilty. Some of them are trying to come along with this ridiculous thing that they didn't realize what was going on, that they thought it was some sort of sex game. Now, Jude, here's the point. If I went down to a house down the road and there was a woman in a bed and she was absolutely comatose and I had sex with her, am I seriously going to turn around and say, I didn't know what was going on? Absolute bullshit. Of course I knew what was going on, that there was something not right, and so on. Anyway, the bottom line is, Pelicot has been jailed for 20 years. Now he's 72, so he's not going to. I don't think there's any way he's going to get out
Mm.
in less than 20 years because the outcry would be so massive. So he's going to die in jail. But there was one guy whose name escapes me. Apparently, he's a 56-year-old forklift driver,
Yeah.
and he raped your Madame Jellicoe, Pellico, 6 times, despite the fact that he was HIV positive. Now, Jude, here's the thing. This woman, I think, should be up for the Nobel Prize for something. I think she's absolutely heroic. She said she switched the shame from her because you know the way it used to be in rape victims were always the ones who were sort of shame type thing.
Mm.
She switched it all over to the men. She
Mm.
goes into court every morning. She was applauded in. She's, I think, the first couple of days she wore dark glasses, sunglasses type thing. And she took them off, and she has stood up to the word. And by the way, during the court case, the judge and I think the prosecution and maybe the defense didn't want to show the videos of the rapes. She insisted that they show. She says because and the fact, Jude, that is amazing strength of character. And I think she's a role model. She has switched it on a side. As well as that, there's a big debate, Jude, about consent in France and all the rest of it. So she has now sort of brought it out into the open. And the way I look at it, I think I'm almost ashamed of being a man after reading some of the stuff, Jude. It is horrific that anybody would do that to another human being.
Well, it certainly is a pretty horrific tale, and I mean the guy must be bonkers.
Yeah,
Inviting in 51 or whatever guys
yeah,
from online. It's
mm,
disgusting. Any rape is disgusting. I mean, it's somebody said to me one time, it's an exercise rather in power than to do with sex. It's sort of
yeah,
I can do what I want with you. Um,
yeah.
so a fair play to her, and I take off my hat. But there's two things actually that concern me, and I'm critical of actually, just to be frank. One is I think it's been overreported. They keep on putting it on and putting it on and putting it on. And the message is, and it's a very important message to get out, that this woman was raped multiple times by arrangement with her husband and people, as you say, that he didn't even know. So that's just tell us that. That's quite enough. I don't want to hear any more. The second thing, and I think it's even more important, is you said she has put the blame where it belongs, and you're right. Of course, the blame belongs with her husband and with these guys who came in. But I've always maintained, why should women be ashamed that they were raped? It's the fucker that did
Mm,
the raping who should be ashamed, not the woman
yeah,
on which it was inflicted, on whom it was inflicted.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't quite get that. Like, if supposing somebody had beaten up a woman and the case came to court. I don't. People would say she was a victim, but they wouldn't say she was very brave for coming in and letting people see what was done to her or testifying. They would say that's appalling. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. But someone with rape, they say, oh, they want to preserve their anonymity, or they don't preserve their anonymity. I'm
Did you know?
delighted that she's led the way in that.
I am, but remember, there's a lot of old patriarchy. Some of the Arab countries were quite recently, not quite recently, several years back. There was a girl raped, and she was sentenced to be lashed because she had put herself in a position to be raped. In other words, they were blaming her for the fact that she was raped.
I could get into trouble for this, but there are people exactly as you say who say you're at fault. You put yourself in a
Yeah,
position
victim
to be
blaming.
raped,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you were asking for it. You're wearing that short skirt or whatever.
Mm.
But there are cases where women, under different circumstances, uh, are in the bedroom of some guy who then rapes them. Now, I don't take away for a moment the fact that the guy has committed the rape and should be punished as severely as possible. But I mean, it's getting very edgy. Like if somebody's going to somebody else's bedroom of the opposite sex, there is a heavy
Mm.
implication there that sex is going to happen. So in a way, a woman going there is giving the guy a chance to show how bad he is.
Well, you see, like the only person that's held responsible for rape is the rapist. That's the first thing. But I take your point to a certain extent that there's a responsibility on maybe, and I'm just saying the woman or a man, that not to put yourself in a position there where you're vulnerable.
Yeah. Or yeah. I take that. Okay. But it's a sort of a ghastly thing. The poor woman, she's 62 or something like that, and I saw her.
72.
Hmm?
She's 72.
72. Jeez, and she
Yeah.
was smiling when she was going into the court. I just thought she looked like a child almost. You know,
Yeah.
there was a kind of an
God
innocence
bless her.
there.
Jude, I think, I really do think, this thing has, you see, Jude, it's brought on several elements, not just it's brought on this thing of, modern technology. This guy was going online and inviting total strangers. He wouldn't have been able to do that 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing about technology and about the modern world, the values of the modern world, the use of technology, the use of or abuse of technology, and as well as that, where we're going. But Jude, could you imagine being a child, one of the children of that man?
Hmm.
Like what under God? I think they've a son and two daughters. How do you live your rest of your life? Sorry, my phone's just come on. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
it's all right. You know, I'll try and get rid of my phone. But the bottom line of it, Jude, is that they're going to have to live the rest of their lives with this. It's unbelievable.
Hmm. Yeah, it's horrible. There's so much sort of collateral damage as well as to the poor woman who's at the center of it. And I'm happy to hear that he's going to spend the rest of his days in prison. As I say, the two things that I would question would be I think it's been over uh, reported. And as a result, it's diminishing returns. When you see it the third or fourth time, you say, oh, God, I've heard this. I do think they ran it for about 3 or 4 days as headlines on, I think, Channel
Mm.
4. So I would suggest more is less, or less is more in that case.
Yeah,
And the second
yeah,
thing is that the idea of the woman being a victim of rape and therefore some shame attaching to her, I just don't buy that. I don't understand it. Why anybody would
well,
say that because a woman is raped, she's shamed. I mean,
yeah,
it seems to be very old-fashioned thinking that somehow she's now
yeah.
stained in some way,
Yeah, that
unclean.
that's the thing. That's the old Victorian values, dude.
Oh, gee.
They're still a relic
Yeah.
of those days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you see, I think the media, to some extent, are at fault there. That they say, "Oh, this is very brave of this person," or they say, "The person wanted to preserve their anonymity," and so on. They don't, stay. I don't hear any commentators coming on and saying, "Why the hell would they be hiding their identity?" or "What shame are you talking about? Who does it
Yeah.
belong to?" Okay,
Mm,
that's that one. Here's another shameful one: the Israeli embassy in Dublin.
mm.
We've talked about
Ah,
this before, I think, but it's one that just it's one of these things that gives and gives. But a little bit of information, Pat. The reason, of course, that Israel is in the headlines now is because of what was done in Gaza, what was done in Lebanon, what was done in Syria. Did you know the Israelis always point, of course, to October the 7th of
mm.
2023, was it? Yeah,
Yep.
2023. And they say this terrible thing that happened. It was terrible that there was 1,200 or something Jewish people or Israelis were killed and slaughtered and all sorts of stuff. Um, but I was listening to a podcast by Joe Brawley again, and he made a
Mhm.
point, and I went and checked it. He said that in 2014, the IDF killed in said 2 months over 2,000 Israelis. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, dude, that was during. Remember, it was one of the raids on Gaza after some bombs or something had gone off. Yeah, that was quite a big story at the time.
I must have seen it, but I've forgotten it. But
Yeah,
it's just a little check because people feel guilty about saying, "Oh, the Israelis are doing terrible things in Gaza." But I'm overlooking the terrible things that happened to them when the Hamas made the inroads and slaughtered so many
yeah,
people. Why that hasn't in the reporting, why that hasn't been referenced, I do not know. I do not know
Mm.
because there's a parallel there. One is that the same thing happened to a bunch of Palestinians, except there was twice as many of them. That's
Yeah.
before what was went on in Gaza.
Jude, between 2008 and 2000, between 2008 and the 6th of October 2023, 6,000 Palestinians were killed by Israel. That's a fact. You can check it out.
What
It's
are the
all there.
dates again,
By the
Pat?
way, Jude,
What are the dates?
between 2008 and the 6th of October 2023, 6,000 Palestinians were killed by Israel. And it doesn't take into account how many houses were knocked down, how much land was appropriated or expropriated, how many people, how much damage was done by bombs dropped on highly populated areas and destroyed, whole sections of Gaza. All that's, and they deliberately targeted water and sewage and lights and electricity, the Israelis, to make us life as horrible for people in Gaza as possible. That's all over. But anyway, just to move on from the embassy thing, the Israelis have this what they call Hasbara. The professional paid politicians or propagandists. They have them all over the world, and they recruit students and all the rest. Anyway, on X and in various other, this last while, people from Ireland are being referred to as Paddy stands, no, as no, Jerikistan and all that sort of stuff. They're sort of saying we're like the Palestinians. I think it's actually proving a bit of a known goal for the Israelis because the Israelis, a lot of people are now putting up proud to be a Pakistan, no, as a
Mhm.
Palestinian Pakistan. They thought the Israelis thought this would be a nice little smear against Ireland and so on. But the other thing, Jude, the Haaretz, it's a left wing Israeli paper. They carried a report yesterday. I saw it in social media. There's this place, I wrote it down. I think it's called the National Terrain Corridor,
Mhm.
and they have shot dead 200 Palestinians. Anybody that crosses an imaginary line, they shoot them dead. And they said 190 of those uh, 200 have been totally innocent Palestinians. Only 10 Hamas people have been identified. The other 190. Now, this is not some left winger like me or you or Joe Brawley or anybody else. It's the Haaretz newspaper, and an Israeli paper has said this themselves.
Mhm.
And you can sort of go along and sort of the evidence is overwhelming that the Israelis are involved in war crimes. And something strikes me as unbelievable, Jude, that they think that their killing of 45,000 people, the bombing of Gaza to smithereens, the turning off of water, fuel, electricity, and all the rest to 2.3 million is of less significance or importance than Ireland accusing Ireland of anti-Semitism. They think that is a far greater crime. It's an unbelievable. They don't see that they're committing a crime at all. But Ireland, suggesting that Simon Harris is anti-Semitic is unbelievable.
I think they know the truth of it, but they've taught themselves to think of the Palestinians as being less than human. That's the long and short. They couldn't operate otherwise. How could you? How could you kill? I heard a thing about Golda Meir. Remember Golda Meir, who was
Yeah,
the president or the prime minister, president of Israel?
no, she was the prime minister, Jude.
Prime Minister was she? She said
Yeah,
that she really resented the Arabs that they had
aye,
put her in a position where they had to kill Palestinian children because if they didn't, the children would come after them because of what they've done to their parents.
yeah.
Can
And
you believe it?
she said, I hate being put in a position where we have to kill Arab children. That the Arabs have put us in this position.
You see, this is
Such
this. It's like rape, isn't it? It's
unbelievable
like the rape
hypocrisy.
and the shame. The shame belongs with the perpetrator. She's saying,
Yes.
oh, those nasty people, they've made us kill their children. For
Yeah.
God's sake, but there's that. How long does that go back, Pat? When was Golda Meir Prime Minister of Israel?
It's in the late 60s, early 70s.
Good God
Yeah.
Almighty!
Yeah.
And then we
Uh,
hear that this all started in November the 7th or whatever.
Yeah, what do you call the 700,000 Palestinians were put out of their. I've checked it out, by the way. Were
mm,
put out of their homes and 19 or fled or whatever. And there was various massacres due by the Israelis way back in 1948. So
mm,
this sort of thing, it started on the 7th of October. Now, by the way, I'm not justifying what happened on the 7th of October. That's a totally different argument. But what I'm saying is the Israelis love to play this, know that what we're doing now is because what happened on October 7th.
mm,
Jude, the hatred from the Palestinians and all the rest has a rich source.
for sure. Incidentally, there's an article by I'm not sure. Jim Ferreter, I think, in the Irish Times today. And he does again a tracing of the relationship between the Irish people and the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. Actually, Ireland and the Jewish people, and maybe Israel, have had close bonds because they see a common sort of history for them. He's quoting, I think it's Dave, maybe. No, it's not. It's Sean McBride. We know how, as Maud Gonne's son, we know how cruelly and unjustly the Jewish people have suffered from intolerance and persecution. I think we can claim that our common suffering from persecution and certain similarities in the history of the two races create a bond of sympathy and understanding between the Irish and the Jewish people. I think that's true. I think in many ways, to a considerable extent, the Irish people have been on the side of the Israelis. I know when I was growing up, there was admiration for their ability to, knock off all these threatening Arab states in 1967. I remember the time when I admired the idea of a kibbutz, and I thought that'd be really interesting to experience that. No longer, no longer. All of that's
No.
sort of
No,
destroyed.
I think the thing about it is we identified with the underdog, and the Jewish people were the underdogs
Yeah.
after the Second World War, and so on. Now we identify with the Palestinians because, let's be honest, the Jewish people in Israel are no longer the underdogs. In fact, they're very much the upper dogs, if you know, in the sense they've got massive help from excuse me, the Americans, from the Brits, and from the EU. And they are they're what is it about absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's what's happened. The Israelis, they seem to be treating the Palestinians as subhuman, that they have no rights to life, property, or existence. That the only people who have rights here in this conflict are the Jewish people, the Israelis.
I think it's referred to put this statistic in as well. About 500,000 Israelis of Jewish ethnicity live on land expropriated from Palestinians. About half a
Hmm.
million Israelis live on land
Yeah,
illegally expropriated.
by the way, illegally. In other words, they were dumped off their land. They had no recompense for it. They were forced out of their land. Can you imagine the hatred of that? But by the way, Jude, one thing as well. There was three. How do you call it? TDs in Ireland, and there's a small Jewish um, community in Ireland. But there was a guy called Ben Briscoe. I remember him. I
Yes, I
used to
remember
work in the
well.
Don RT. There was Alan Shatter, and there's a
Hmm.
guy, I think he was a Labour guy called Mervyn Taylor. So,
Yeah.
and they were always well got, and they always got elected, and so on. So this thing that there's anti-Semitism in Ireland, hey, they're referring way back to someone before the state was even formed. There was some boycott of in Limerick, I think, of a Jewish business for some reason. I can't remember what it was. Now, Jude, that's it. If that's the one thing they can refer back to before the formation of the state, it must have happened in 1918 or 10 or something.
Well, the next topic we're going to go on to, Pat, because time is passing, is to do with the forming of the government. And here's my input before we start. I think some party should say, we're going to organize a boycott of all Israeli goods. We'll set it up. We'll have a place where people can sign their views on it or their signature to it and commit themselves to never touching anything that comes out of Israel. What do you think of that as a strategy? Would that go down well?
I would agree with you totally. Here's the thing: the occupied territories bill, Jude, as I think it's going to get sort of expedited. I would think now, after I think Simon Harris and Finn Gale and maybe even Michael Martin, after the sort of stuff from the Israelis, I would think they are both basically saying, "Go fuck yourselves."
But I mean,
I
again, I come back, Pat. What the hell took them? I mean, I know for a fact that Frances Black, the singer, the senator as well,
yeah,
she had an occupied territories bill before, I don't know how many years ago now, about 5 years ago. And
yeah.
they sort of filibustered it through, filibustered the
Well, I
time.
remember Coveney saying that Ireland couldn't act unilaterally. It was a EU prerogative in regard. Now that he said that was the legal advice. Apparently, that is no longer the legal advice. I don't know whether that was convenient legal advice or inconvenient legal advice, but
Okay.
anyway, something along those lines.
Here's a question for you, Pat. Put you on the spot. Do you know what goods that come into your house, or if there are stuff coming into your house, come from Israel?
No, but Jude, a lot of there was oranges. There were dates and there was stuff. There was someone else. I remember. In fact, my brother-in-law, fair play to him, used to go around with a marker and he'd look at certain products and mark boycott, boycott. you know, and
Good
then,
for
that
him.
was a very good idea. No, but Jude, to answer your by the way, Jude, you need to look quite closely at some of the things. Apparently, there's a lot of distraction. You don't realize they're coming from Israel because they're marked. Like, by the way, there was some sort of fish. The last day somebody told me it was like no, chicken, and you think
Mm.
it's somewhere in Ireland, but it's actually from Vietnam.
Yeah, but you see, we shouldn't have to work these things out and puzzle them over, and then, as happens in many cases, including myself, I say, "Ah, geez, I give up. I couldn't spot them. I have to do my shopping." There should be a political party who should put together a list and a definitive list of things that might be sold by various outlets which are Israeli goods and tell people don't buy these. I mean,
Yeah.
if we condemn the Israelis for what they're doing, then we're condemning ourselves if we don't do that, at least a little bit about it. Of course, it's not going to change everything, hardly change anything, but you have to do the right thing. And the right thing is an organized boycott of everything Israeli now. Would you agree?
Hmm. Yeah, but you know that I agree totally, but that's not going to be the thing. You can bet your life there'll be a lot of political opposition and a lot of from the enterprise people, the business people. Wait a minute, America's big allies with Israel, and they are. The multinationals and the corporations are giving us massive tax revenue, and if they pulled out, or if they did X, Y, and Z, we're going to suffer
Well,
this.
that's
And
true.
we're a small nation. We shouldn't be interfering with the nation with affairs of it. Let them look
Oh,
after themselves. Your turn.
oh God, I think that's a pretty heartless view. And it sits badly with people condemning, like how Simon Harris condemning, what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank for
Mm,
that matter. Okay, we're
mm.
really down to the last few minutes, Pat, and we're thinking about Christmas Day. And of course, your house and my house are going to be loaded with luxury. Wine will be sloshing around, plum puddings, enormous turkeys that have to be wheeled into the dining hall before they're consumed. But you can avoid all that. You can go to a place called a very nice place. I've been in it myself. I had a lunch there once. Ashford Castle. Are you familiar with this
Yeah.
place? It's in the banks of Lough Corrib and the River Cong in County Mayo. It's quite
Mayo,
a
yeah.
nice place. I wonder what the history
Jude,
behind
on my other life, when I was an editor of a newspaper, I got a freebie down there,
it. Did
and
you?
it was
Jeez.
we stayed 2 nights there, as far as I
Oh
remember.
wow.
Uh, but hey, but Jude, know something? I wrote it down because I'm useless with number. Jude, if you want to spend the 3 nights over Christmas, you can start from, and I mean start from 7,100, or for the 3 nights, and if you want to stay in the presidential suite, it's 18,000 for the 3 nights.
But look, it's worth it. You'll get for that. You'll on Christmas Eve. You'll have mulled wine reception. That'll be followed by afternoon
We could have
tea.
that at home.
The evening will round off with a cocktails reception in the drawing room and dinner in the George V dining room. You haven't got a George
Yeah.
V dining room, have you?
Not a, hey, by the way, we when we stayed there, the head waiter was an absolutely gas man, and he was a genuinely nice man as well, a
Ah,
real professional. But he was telling me, we were sitting chatting to him one night. he Ronnie Reagan stayed there. President Ronald Reagan stayed there, and so on. And he was the guy who was in charge of serving Reagan. He was
Uh,
really funny, nice man, you know. But he had away from, he was a professional to his fingertips, but away from it, he was a very down to earth man. And he saw some of the comments he made that night were hilarious.
well, I
I'm not
hope they're
repeating them in case
critical
the
of
man's still alive.
I hope they're
Yeah,
critical of Ronnie Reagan. I actually think, Pat, and this is the truth. I think it's immoral for a place like that to exist when there's
yeah,
thousands of children and thousands of adults sleeping on the streets and the levels of poverty around Dublin, especially, but other parts
yeah,
of the country too. I think it's immoral to have that. I think that's consumption. Who needs to have that level of cosseting, like a mid-morning boat cruise and hot
yeah,
whiskies, traditional Irish music, buffet, a movie screening, wine tasting? Who needs that? Is
yeah.
there something wrong with
Dude,
those people?
there's a thing on social media the other day of a wee fella in Gaza. His two legs have been blown off, and he was going around the ground with a wee sort of like a wheel with two handles on it, pushing himself forward. And I was thinking to myself, by the way, Gaza does haunt me, Jude. It really genuinely does. 45,000 dead, and all the rest. And what is it, two-thirds of them women and children, totally innocent people. And you see this sort of unbelievable consumption. Somebody's spending 18,000 for 3 nights where they can go, mulled wine and traditional singing and hot whiskies on the Caraba when you sail up on Christmas Day before your big dinner. Jesus, Jude, do you ever think of getting maybe given 17,500
I was going to say
to a
exactly
fund?
that. Even to give
Yeah,
a half of that, it would
yeah,
be a considerable improvement. It
yeah,
really is, it's a question, I suppose, of whether you see life as being a matter of satisfying all my cravings or maybe attending to some of the life and death needs of other people. Comes down to that in the
yeah.
end.
Jude, there's a woman I know. She says life should be about not what you want, but what you need.
Hmm.
Jude, and there's so like we could all want a Rolls Royce, but we don't need one.
Aye, that's right. That's right. Now, most of the stuff, our society, I hate to be a Grinch or what is it? What's the word for like
The
a
Grinch,
Grinch?
the
I hate to
Grinch,
be a Grinch at Christmas, but the way our society is organized, there's something seriously wrong with it, where we
yeah,
list the richest people in Ireland and say, wonderful people. Okay, Pat,
yeah.
with God's help,
On
I'll
that
see you
note,
on
Jude,
Monday. But
see you on Monday or for our final before Christmas.
okay, right, Pat. Thanks very much.
All the best, Jude.